Hello, folks. How is it going? In this week's episode of The Futurists, we are joined by a visionary who is the intersection of finance, culture, and blockchain. That's none other than Louis Martin, the founder of the startup Silver Block, platform that's reimagining treasury management through programmable money and decentralized infrastructure. He is also the co-founder of the company called Stakes, a pioneer venture that empowers artists and creators to tokenize their work, build sustainable economies around their so buckle up for the exciting ride. Hey, Luis, how's it going?
Oh, here we are. Hey, Barrett.
Yeah,
Good to meet you. And yeah, good to meet.
it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, Luis. Thank you so much for your time in joining us for this podcast. I've already given an introduction about your work, and despite the busy schedule, you've agreed to be part of this podcast. Thank you so much. Let's quickly get started with Tech3. What's the crack about Silver Block?
Thank you. No, thank you firstly for having me. And it's a pleasure to be able to share some experience with your community. And thanks to everyone listening as well. Hope this is useful in any way possible, whether you're entering into Web3 or just thinking about entrepreneurship. Just in general, coming into, Silver Block. Let's talk about it quickly. Well, this is actually a project I've been working on for the last 6 months. Coming back into the DeFi space after about 5 years, building more in the creative side of Web3. But yeah, it's in a nutshell a treasury application that is intended for capital efficiency, or as I call it, capital efficiency first treasury application. But really, what it does is it's an AI co-pilot, for
Okay.
example, you use in your Web3 day-to-day operations. Many people are still doing it in Excel and Google Sheets. It's just having an AI co-pilot so that it organizes all of your transactions, all of your insights with regards to the positions that you have, and everything related to treasury operations, funding, payments, and even keep track of your accounting and reporting for whatever purposes you shall need that, all under one application that kind of lives as a co-pilot besides you, taking care of what's important,
That's there.
which is trading and yeah, treasury operations. This is mostly for treasury managers, hedge funds, and definitely CFOs in the Web3 space.
Oh, that's cool. That's good to know, Louis. So yeah, so that's interesting. And so building and having a co-pilot for Web3 operations more significant in the space of AI. Yeah, I think you're actually in the channeling in the right direction for building something in that space. You have around 15 years of experience from Credit Suisse to Silver Block. You have been a founder multiple times. No, so can you please help us, assist us with some of your experiences, the journey from where you started as a trader and then as a founder in Silver Block and co-founder in Stakes?
Yeah, thank you for that question. The the whole path or the journey starts back in 2000, I believe, 14. So first of all, I'm from Mexico. I'm an immigrant from Mexico about 13 years ago, migrated to the US for a few years. And then later, I found my space in Europe. But yeah, throughout this time, I was mostly engaging in corporate jobs, especially in the early days of my career. I would say from my second, third semester of university up until 2017, I worked mostly for stock traders, banks, stock brokerages, and some funds. Very TradFi, orthodox, typical finance, financial, global markets career in that sense. And I never really ventured into entrepreneurship, to be honest. I had an upbringing which very much directed towards work hard, let's say the boomer life, the boomer methodology,
Yeah, yeah,
as many of us were brought up. And that's kind of how I just didn't see through really everything we can see through today with regards to entrepreneurship, Web3 and whatnot. Web3 wasn't even around, of course. I would change. That wasn't my initial experience, but it's interesting. The first driver to do the big leap from going to corporate into entrepreneurship was
yes,
there's two main drivers there. On one, which is my favorite, it's something very much related to passion. I think anyone that
yeah,
works in corporate, you find yourself maybe just daydreaming in the middle of the day, just thinking something amazing that you just learned about, something
yes,
where we all
yes.
enter into this space. And passion drive, it's somewhere that I think everyone has that within themselves. And that's in me, it's a passion for not just entrepreneurship, but I have big passion for culture and for music. I think this mostly comes from just also my upbringing. I admire very much, the creative space, whether that's
Space.
a yes, the music artists, everyone that's
Yeah.
behind the music, the composers, the art, obviously the artists that actually create these works alive, whether it's
Yeah.
sculpture, performing arts. I just find that very long lasting and everlasting, and
Yeah.
more
Beyond
relevant
life.
to what we're going to see in our generations today, what we'll continue
Yes.
going through. So anyway, that's a passion. That was a driver, and that's mostly music. It was what got me into it. So there was a pivoting point, which did cause me to dive into this, to follow this driver, as I call it, and which leads me to the second thing. Really pushed me, like gave me the kickoff to just really try. And it was mostly looking at the situation in the company that I worked for. Back then, it was Credit Suisse. I was working in Zurich in their headquarters. Very happy. That was after I did my MBA over here in Spain. And I was just very happy to put all of that academic knowledge into the big bank and corporate job. It was the biggest bank that I worked for. And anyway, after a year, interestingly, this is 2015 actually. I was just looking at the stock and every single other metric that I could find within the bank deteriorating quite quickly. This would be whether you're looking at the stock price, you're looking at sales or revenue of the bank, kind of like the future of the bank. And at the same time, I remember 2015, I was reading about Ethereum. It was actually the Ethereum Homestead white paper.
Okay.
I think it was the
Okay.
first edition. That's 2015. Started speaking about programmable money. I started seeing all the community and kind of the rationale behind it. And it just, when I was looking at these two, let's say,
Yeah.
very different slopes or movements, it was a no-brainer to me. I just decided, like, I have to do this now. Yeah, I'm already an immigrant. I'm already moving. Let's just give it a go. That's when I decided to do it. And then I decided to do it precisely to bring back my core passion to really drive me, motivate me. So I decided to
Yeah.
start my first project in this regard, which was Stakes, which was, or let's say, tokenization, the tokenization for creatives so that they can finance and fund their works.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. It's such a beautiful journey from Mexico to Spain, all the way to Switzerland, and then Ireland, all the places in Europe. That's an amazing journey. And it's interesting to know how you moved from a normal corporate job to jumpstart your projects. That kind of drive many professionals lack. Thank you so much for the explanation. Up next, I just want to jump into this particular silver block project that you're working on. Where exactly is it heading to? You mentioned about treasury management through AI and Web3. So that's an interesting space, right? So what can we expect when the smart contracts are becoming normal across the globe? You can see that the US have started adapting to the stable coins. Slowly, all the countries would be adapting to all the cryptocurrencies maybe in the next 5 to 10 years. So, where do you see silver blocks sitting with the treasury management?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Barry. The really the thing, treasuries, we know about treasuries for some time, and now they're becoming a bit more relevant in just the general media and in the coverage of the space. And I point mostly to Mr. Michael Saylor being the spearhead of that movement. Right now, it's very interesting what's happening in Web3 with regards to corporate treasuries. You see the Ethereum treasuries coming in with Tom Lee and the other guys. Now you see even the Solana treasuries. I was reading about it this morning, hyperliquid treasuries. Anyway, this is something to just observe and kind of question ourselves as to why these companies are so interested bringing their funds and their treasuries, which I'm sure they already do, some level of treasury management on the TradFi side. These are, in many cases, public companies, by the way, in the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ and whatnot. And they're interested in coming over to Web3. That's kind of where it all starts. My answer to that is why we built Silverblock. Let's get into the concept of what capital efficiency means, which is
Yeah,
really at the front of the whole project and its narrative, and what can be achieved by Web3 and smart contracts in favor of capital efficiency. I think that's
yeah,
something very interesting to discuss. And I think that's also what all these treasuries are understanding much better now. So that's why we built it. It's really what it is. Let's discuss capital efficiency just quickly. It's just a concept of if you're able to let's say, put 100 euros into your account, but you're potentially able to have the purchasing power of 120 euros, then you're having an additional 20% to play with, so to speak. If you
Yes.
use leverage, if you use whatever's available, a short long position, and a delta neutral position, you could get fancy about this. But in a nutshell, the possibility of playing with a combination of long positions or just holding positions and maybe using the DeFi layer to use those tokens as collateral, unlocking additional purchasing power or leverage. That's another good example to LP in a position and maybe use that as a liquidity provider and generate some yield to your treasury. But not just that, being able to take that LP position and use it as collateral for another position. You see, capital efficiency, the DeFi layer allows just being long, short, or holding tokens. And that's something that I think everyone's about to discover and tap into. I already see many institutions coming into this space. Not sure capital efficiency and what we're going after. Very long question to your answer, but really that's what we're building towards. Just allowing everyone, not just the smart guys and the smart money coming from the institutionals, but mostly
Yes.
anyone to have access to this capital efficiency
Okay.
opportunities.
Good to know that. Thank you so much for the extensive information, Louis. So let's quickly move on to the topic of the stable coins, right? So like the stable coins are becoming a norm in US. And what would you think? What was the balance between innovation and the regulatory compliance in Europe, especially with all the tight regulations around cryptocurrencies or in data sharing or data privacy? So where is it all heading to? What's your thought?
Yeah, thank you for this question. This is a quite relevant and I think very dynamic environment that we are currently going through with regards to this regulation. But just this year, we got the rules if we want to go into the European kind of framework. We finally, after many years, for good and bad, depends who you ask, we finally had the laws, the regulation on stable coins and what will be allowed within the EU and whatnot. My opinion after I saw this is called mostly the MiCAR regulations. Unfortunately, my personal opinion, this has been a complete waste of time and this is not suitable. What we have today as the regulatory framework for Europe is not suitable for innovating or for competing in we're
Okay.
discussing now in capital efficiency and just Web3 innovation. Simple as that. Why? Mostly because of the locks, controls, and regulation here in Europe. Europe is extremely, and I would say overly, in terms of innovation, in terms of opening to sandbox, in terms of allowing, for example,
Yep.
stable coins. It's extremely complicated. You have so many licenses, and not just the license, what it costs to have the license, the reserves that are asked. They want you to put the reserves in European banks, which is already a deficiency when you look at global markets. And all these limitations are just not allowing us to go into the best direction. But that's just my opinion. There might be other
Okay.
fintech companies thriving in that way. Therefore, my approach has been to look at other jurisdictions where we can and have much better turf to innovate.
Even in countries like India or even China or even in Europe, we still have a lot of progress that needs to happen to make the value of the stable coins known to all the common people. Only when a product is reaching a common audience, then decentralized products like Ethereum or a stable coin can be successful. The success lies only when common people start using it seamlessly, which is happening in the US now. And slowly, I believe it will happen in Europe and also in India with good regulatory happening to all these coins and crypto world. That's interesting to know.
Yes, I
Thank you
agree.
so
I would definitely agree with that. Yes, definitely, Barrett, because it's funny, like stable coins have been around for more than 5 years. Why is it only now that everyone's taking a look at them? That's kind of the question we should be asking. And I think you kind of answered that in a way.
yeah, yeah,
You know?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think it's something that can't be stopped at this stage, just like
Stop it.
Bitcoin could not be stopped 10 years ago.
Okay. So now let's quickly move on to the as a founder, having led multiple ventures and worked with a lot of investors in different stages. What are the different things that influence your product strategy and partnerships? It can be with the investor, or it can be what do you look and what is the kind of this is basically a leadership kind of question as a founder, just trying to get information so that people are inspired by your approach on how you take things when it comes to collaboration with investors, or it can be with anybody?
Yeah, good question. I think something that is very important, first time founder, especially when it's your first time coming into and wanting to build and having that energy. I think what's very important when starting to generate deals, just approach the industry and get involved. My approach was I was thinking that I could come with my good traditional finance knowledge or skill set, and I thought that would be enough to position me or give me a space in the Web3 market.
Okay.
And that is definitely not the case. So to answer your question, that was a good lesson that I learned throughout the way. When entering new industry, coming into just a new room, I think it's important to be humble. It's something that we don't see very much in crypto, regardless of your bags or regardless of your investors or whoever you have at your cap table or which series. I think it's important to just be humble and open minded and do not bring your ideas from outside of that room to be imposed in that room. I think it's good if you want to collaborate and bring those ideas to be
Yeah.
imposed. I particularly thought I had better ideas and I had better everything for some reason. I believe that. And that is not the way, especially in Web3, because Web3 brings, in my opinion, it brings the minds of people that don't exactly want to bring the same stuff that were in the banks and in those other rooms, as we all know. So I guess just keeping your head low and just at the beginning, just learning lots, leaning to the right people is already a good move. Why? Because then it opens your first portals for collaboration. It's a lot easier to go out there and be humble and ask for advice and ask for, hey, I'm new here. I'd love to learn more about you. Hey, even though maybe you studied the Homestead white paper, whatever, to come
Yes.
and say, hey, I'm not a technical person, but I would love to learn from you who might give me a better direction.
Yeah.
Comments like people start
Yes.
appreciating you a lot more, people start hearing you more, and it just creates an environment of we're here talking human to human, and we're not here to impose. It's a bit
Yeah.
more about having an organic, constructive conversation. So that was my learning, and it opened many conversations. I started getting involved with Web3 to lean towards ecosystems, using the same approach to get involved. In the end, it's you entering the markets and the spaces. So it's your effort that can be expected. Nobody's going to bring you in. And that means getting into the Discord rooms, whether it's digitally or even physically, right? Getting to Discord rooms, saying, "Yeah, good morning. Hey, I'm here doing something positive for that community, respecting other builders, understanding that there's other
Yes.
founders and other builders having that respect. Would you like to help us in the DAO for this Discord server that I joined? If it
Yeah.
looks like you might know how to handle XYZ with the smart contracts or the treasury or the finance side. Hey, can you help us out with this?" And this is how I started finding my first collaborations teams. That's started finding my first investors and advisors.
That's amazing point, Louis. That's absolutely a mind-blowing thing. Not only in a startup world, also in any part of life. It can be in any relationships, right? So being inclusive, though we know few stuffs, being inclusive in the sense being collaborative, not always just blowing up the trumpet and then just doing the kind of shadowing approach would be the best possible thing to build a community. In companies, we have diversity and inclusion, and also in any of the organizations. It can be colleges, schools, it can be anything where people are basically letting others to work and then work with you. That's the kind of approach that you must, like all of us must take, so that we basically are making others comfortable, and also like not oversharing things, and also learning is the first thing that we have to put forward in the first step in any of the approaches that we take, learning from others. Like that's where the all activities inside a company, right? So within a company, like diversity, inclusion, or even team collaboration, and everything falls into the same circle. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Thank you so much for that. And let's quickly move on to the final section, wherein we would like to understand, what do you think in Web3 you could have done different based on the Web3 principles to the existing financial system, so that it can be so effective, or it can be beneficial, or it can be efficient? And what's your approach? And could you please explain why?
That's a very good question. I have two answers to that. On one side, I think it's very much related to the origin of Web3 and, what was Bitcoin created? And are we really living by such ideals when we interact with the current Web3 ecosystem? Where I would start this conversation, something about the current financial system with Web3 principles. I would take a lot of attention into the meaning of decentralization. I think it's a big word now. I think many people use it in a way or maybe implement it at a certain level, but it's more than that, in my opinion, understanding the concept of decentralization. And I think it's very relevant to what you're mentioning here. Which part do we want to bring over from the centralized world of traditional finance? Some of it makes sense to bring over. Not everything has to be decentralized, but exactly why and for which purposes do we want to decentralize and bring things over? So I would very much change the way the profit mechanics, the revenue
Mhm.
narratives, and the incentives and compensations for participating in traditional finance. We should not make the same mistake of building now exactly that same. I call these empires. This is building empires, which is, in my opinion, what banks do. They don't build tools for humanity. They build empires,
Yeah.
gates and locks into
Okay.
the decentralized
Decentralized
arena.
world. Yeah.
That would be, we built this ecosystem, as you know, and the OGs and the people behind it, the real OGs, not me. They know this. They're still advocating and living to this every single day. And I think those are the guys that we should be looking at and learning from we're building in this new space. In a nutshell, let's not fall into the same mistake and trap of building
Yes.
the finance system dressed up as DeFi. uh, You
Yeah.
know,
Totally agreed with you. 100% with you on this, Lewis, because the ultimate goal of decentralization is basically to have control without central gatekeepers. However, when it moves to corporate, they have their own structure. Adapting to decentralized thing for corporate ecosystem is not same as the way the original OGs like Satoshi Nakamoto or even the Ethereum founder Vitalik Buterin, the vision was to have the total decentralization and giving total autonomy for all the individual players rather than a centralized authority. So that's a very complicated thing. Again, we are just circling back to the same concept of regulations and how regulatory bodies are going to take the decentralized system and adapt to it. So that's going to be a bit complicated and it's still gray area for all of us to explore. And yeah, so that's an interesting thing to know.
and
Yeah.
if I could add a second point to that, I really like this post from Vitalik Buterin. Actually, I think it was he made a post called "Make Ethereum Cypherpunk Again." Yeah, I'm a big advocate of that narrative, and that's the other point that I wanted to bring. Let's what's fun about crypto, man, is we do things differently, and we do things not just because it's fun to do it differently. There's a purpose to it, but at the same
Yes.
time, I don't know if you remember the first time you opened your MetaMask and you signed a transaction, kind of felt better than doing an online
Personally,
transfer.
yeah.
And I
Felt
don't
more
want to,
personal.
maybe it's
Yeah.
yeah, and maybe that makes it sexy for, I don't know, us tech lovers and whatever. But my concept of the cypherpunk movement, of just like not just looking at this as something to build empires on, Web3, let's go build empires, but rather build tools, make them available. Remember, this is open source, this is decentralized for the same purpose. All of these prior movements, I think, should also be brought over. And that's the second thing that I would say. We should always remember that crypto is fun because of reason, and it could get very boring, just like banking, maybe, and the things just like this. So, yeah, that's the second one. Just I wanted to add that.
Absolutely agreed with you, Lewis. Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, here is the final topic. It's like, where do you see Silver Block in the next 6 months, 1 year? Where would you like us to collaborate for the second time?
Well, thank
Yeah.
you. Love to actually come back in 6 months' time. That's a really cool idea. We're in a very strong roadmap to pursue the product primitive of the capital efficiency first solutions. That's going to be about a 6 month to 1 year rollout while we get this right, test and get this out into the market, ship it out. But that's just the beginning step. I think be looking at in 6 months that is more interesting. Be the opportunities that these new systems, these new treasuries will be providing to its users. I
Yeah.
think in 6 months, what the product will be able to do is allow anyone to deploy their own stablecoin based on any digital asset.
Yes.
No, if you have some Bitcoin, and it doesn't matter, you can deploy a treasury worth 50 euros, 100 euros, just like back in the day. You could participate in an ICO with just 5, 10 euros. And you can be part of other treasuries. So I think there's going to we're going to start seeing lots of social treasuries similar to the concept of DAOs, crossovers between TradFi and Web3. And we will be very much involved in that space,
Okay.
connecting the dots of making sure whoever wants to build a treasury is able to do so in a permissionless and efficient way. And whoever wants to uh, take advantage of the capital efficiency that smart contracts Web3 brings will be there. So that means we expect at least anyone using our product to have 3 times, we're talking about 3x more actual. What our measurement of capital efficiency is velocity and how many times you can actually multiply the value of your yield. So we think at least 3 times. That will be our selling point in 6 months. We'll be telling you and everyone, hey, you want to make 3 times the money that you have in your wallet, switch to a treasury. And we'll be very happy to onboard as many users and enthusiasts of that narrative as possible. Look forward to that.
Wow, that's ambitious. I really wish all the best for your roadmap and plan, and we will definitely sync up again in 6 months, and we will have a success meet. Thank you so much for your time, Louis. It was an absolute pleasure to have you in the podcast. I would like to keep in touch with you and collaborate on all these possibilities in Web3. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Goodbye, Bert. Thank you. Appreciate you.